Servus and welcome. I'm Vera at Spilled Coffee Crafts, and it is time. After nearly 10 months of junk journal planners, I wanted to show you what I kept, what I changed, how this is going, and how my planner for the next year will look. At least structure-wise. So maybe a few of you will remember I started this March, so March 2025, with creating one signature per month as my junk journal planner. And my goal was with this, I don't want to use digitals. I said it so many times, there is nothing wrong with digitals. It's just not how I want to make my junk journals. So I use digitals very, very rarely. And for my planners, I didn't want to use any, if possible. And I also didn't want to make myself some kind of Excel file or something like this where I have the months and everything and I just print it out. I wanted to do everything with stamps, with materials that I had. This was my goal for this junk journal planner, so that also creating it is not just printing out, binding it and it is done, but it's a small project each month creating this. So, and also this is why I create them month by month, because if I find that something is not working, then I can change it starting with the next month and I don't waste anything that I have created before. Well, that's it. Okay, this was my very first one where I just tried out things. So this is March. I'm not 100% sure if I showed it. As a cover, I usually just use what I find in my stash that I normally would not use in my real art projects or journals that I really make for the pure joy of journal making. Many of you will know my style. It's much more grungy and vintage with lots of vintage ephemera. But with my planners, I'm totally free. I use whatever I have, whatever I created. If I created something very bright and cheerful on a whim, then I will use it in my planner at one point maybe. Or just in the month where I created it. So this was my very first one where I used my self-dyed paper for the pages, and yeah, and I was not completely sure with the structure, so I have here the first week, and then I have the Scrappy 8 challenge that goes through the year from starting with February to October. And then there was Mixed Media March, and I wanted to document this in my planner, of course. This was my project for March for the Scrappy 8. And that's fine, this is exactly what I want to do in my planner. But the structure itself these are the stamps. And I showed you, I think in April, when I created my April planner, I created a video where I showed how I do this. I will link it in the description box. So, and in general, I was happy with the direction this was going. So this was my very first one. Yeah, the last page, it was reserved for notes that don't necessarily only are relating to this month, but for notes that I make for later projects or something like this. So if I want to go back, I know I only need to look at the last page if I want to look something up for a later point. Yeah, this was how this was starting. Then we have March. where I have more or less already the structure for the journal that I also kept through the rest of the year. So which means my first page is usually dedicated to the Scrappy 8 challenge for the months where there is a Scrappy 8 challenge. If there is none, I do just something different, either to one of the projects that I do or just putting in scraps, collaging, whatever. So, but if there is a Scrappy 8 challenge, the first page is dedicated to it. And then I start with the weeks of this month. So, and I usually have this structure here with the complete monthly overview, and then the days for the week where I can make marks, where I can make notes, what if there is something planned for these days. And I decorate the pages as I go. Yeah, and in May I still decorated the pages, also the pockets and everything. I created this in this week with materials from this week, let's call it like this. I usually have one of the small pages in here. Yeah, and in May I still have this tracker here, this mini tracker, for where I thought it would be very useful for tracking different things. Yeah, and as you also can see, I am stamping on the pages that I bound in. And the coffee dyed paper is relatively speaking thick, kind of. Yeah, and this was also printed on thicker paper, on photo paper, so there was no problem with the stamping in this one. But if you're looking at March, I think you can see, can we see it here? Do I need, no, I use different ink here. But in the oncoming, let's see, in the oncoming months, I found that I have a problem with the stamping. If I use a juicy pad, then the stamping comes through, because this is just normal printer paper. This one is coffee dyed, but let's see, maybe August or September. It got more obvious. Oh yeah, you can see it here. So the stamping for the week from this week comes through on the other page. And this started to bother me because, and this was also because I switched inks, and the new ink pads were much juicier than the old ones. So this came through much more often, and it started to bother me. So I changed what I'm doing once more, and this is my current planner. We have now the end of November, and I also created already December. Yeah, and so what I changed starting from March. I usually have now a pocket here to put in some things. This is still the page dedicated to the Scrappy 8. For November, there was no Scrappy 8 challenge because it goes only for October, so I'm just collaging things that I found, trash, yeah. So I usually have an art journal page here, or at least a collage or something like this. And also I wanted to be more flexible with what papers I use for the pages. So to make this easier for me and have different types of papers, and I don't need to be worrying about the stamping, I started to stamp my monthly block, let's call it, or my planning block, on paper, on additional paper that I glue on the pages. So I don't need to worry about seeping through the ink to the other page. So, and you see, I kept the structure. This works very good for me to have the overview here. I mark here the week that this is corresponding to on the overview, and these are the days, and I can make the notes for this week. Yeah, and yeah, then I usually use 3 pages, and which leaves me with, when we have 4 weeks, it leaves me with the center page empty, where I usually then make a collage, an art journal page. So a relatively small and easy project when I don't want to make a complete journal. This middle page proved very good for this one. Also, if there are small collaborations, I make them in my planner, as I did with the Treasure Trove Trio. How was the name? Doesn't matter. Yeah, if it is a small collaboration that I'm participating on, usually on a very short notice, because I saw it and I said, oh, I want to do this also, I want to join in, then I also do it in my planner. This was because I was traveling and I was abroad, and this is all material that I gathered during my trip. So just, yeah, mostly junk or packaging material or information brochures, things like this. And this also, then I also have the cards and everything. I start decorating with the things from this week. With this one, I even made a pocket on the back side so I can have my receipts in there. And these are only receipts I kept because I was traveling. I don't usually keep my receipts. So yeah, one of the main things is that I started to glue in these pages with the structure, so I can use whatever paper I want to use for the pages. Which means, and what I also changed, you can see it best here in my December journal that I already prepared. So you see, this is an empty journal, how I make it for the new month. Usually in the last week of the old month, sometimes a little bit earlier, but yeah, usually about the last week or in the first week also. It really depends how my timetable is. Yeah, and you see there is nothing on the first page because this is created during the month, or would be the Scrappy 8 page. Then in this case I used blue coffee dyed paper for all the pages because they were kind of matching with this cover, which is the cover from a music book, for a sheet music for Christmas songs for a guitar. And guitar? Yeah, and this was kind of matching. So, and this was also the paper where I had problems that the ink was seeping through. So this was very useful to put in these pages like this. And you see, what I usually do also now is that I already prepare also the pockets and the cards for the whole month. So also December for me has 4 weeks. And for the weekly pages, I have a pocket, a card, a belly band, a card, so something to put a card in where I can take notes, note additional to-dos, whatever, or do some decoration with things that I want to keep. And yeah, I kind of, and this way it's a little bit more cohesive, but I still use materials that I just have and that I usually don't use in my art projects. Yeah, and also I kept this last page for the information. Yeah, this is what I wanted to show you mainly. So this is how it changed from during this year, and the structure as this is now really is fitting for me. And yeah, I think for at least the next month I will continue making my planners like this. So yeah, this was just this short overview, a very chatty video this time, but I thought it would be interesting for you to see how my planners evolved. So, because I was sharing them when I started this project, and I think after nearly 1 year, now I figured really out how this is working for me, and I still love them. So I'm really, really sure that I will continue making them for each month. That's that. And then, yes, these are all of them. So now not in the correct order, but yes. So it wouldn't work for me to have them in a bound journal. And of course I could, and these are only 10 because I only started in February or in March. Yeah, only 10 months. And yes, I will bind them. But this will be a different video where I bring you along how I create the binding for this one and the cover and everything, because I want to have them in one very thick, chunky journal. Because I'm weird and I think it is fun to have one big journal for a year and not divide them into quarters or 4 months. Yeah, I want to have them all together as they are in one big chunky journal, and I will bring you along on the process how I bind them together. Yes, that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this very chatty episode, and see you at the next time. Bye!